Your uniqueness is your genius. It doesn't matter how many podcasts on marketing or sales there are out there, or how many podcasts about horses there are out there. You are the only one that's going to convey your message in the way that you do.
Welcome to Too Legitimate to Quit, instantly actionable small business strategies with a pop culture spin. I am your host, Annie P. Ruggles, and my guest today is the marvelous Michelle Abraham. International speaker, podcast producer, and host Michelle Abraham is the author of the upcoming book, The Profitable Podcast. Voted number 16 the last 2 years on Podcast Magazine's list of the top 50 moms in podcasting. She was also awarded Entrepreneur of the Year by Business from the Heart and nominated for People's Choice Award. Michelle is the founder of Amplify You, described by Shark Tank alumni Kevin Harrington as North America's top podcast management company. Dang! Amplify You specializes in done-for-you services, helping visionary entrepreneurs with a powerful message to market and monetize their podcasts while making a lasting impact. Michelle and her team have launched more than 200 podcasts in the last 3 years and manage over 65 shows weekly. Michelle has been sharing her passion and mentoring podcasters since 2012. An advocate for the freedom lifestyle, she walks her talk, living off the grid on a lake and boating her kids to school, all the while running her successful online business. Michelle, I am so freaking excited to have you here today. I've been waiting for this interview for so long, but you're finally here to tell us, what do small business owners need to focus on this week?
Ooh, I love that question. Ooh, what do small business owners need to focus on today? I think they need to start thinking about how they make a transformation in their customers instead of a transaction.
Oh, damn. You knew I was going to love that, didn't you? You woke up this morning and you're like, I'm going to say transformation over transaction and I'm going to make Annie's head explode. I know you were thinking that, but that's so totally true, right? There is a ocean of difference between this is a person looking to solve a problem in their life, in their business, looking to grow even, and this is a person who's possibly going to pay me. Totally different world. Tell me more.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, we're so much about what we do right now is about relationships, and relationships are the key to business. And if you can help someone find their transformation or give them a transformation, even then they're going to be a customer for life. They're going to be feeling indebted to you. You're going to be their hero, whatever it is. But I think if, we stop focusing on, is this person going to pay me or who's going to be the next client? Like, that's where business changes. And that's when you're taking business to a whole different level, which I think we are moving the consciousness of the world is shifting into more that kind of thinking and that kind of business rather than the typical business that we're in right now.
Yes, because my God, here comes the cliche, y'all, put your seatbelt on. But it's about the journey.
Absolutely.
Right? If we're focusing on the transaction, we're focusing on the beginning or end of that journey exclusively, depending on what we're selling. But if we're focusing on the transformation, we're looking at supporting people before, during, and after, even if our contact point with them is just a transaction, because we're speaking to the transformation on either side of it, and we're setting them up for success on either side of it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we want to set people up for success. We want to get them a win. Like, get them a freaking win. Don't make them pay you first for a win. Like, get them a win, and then their eyes are open. Then they're ready to roll, right?
Let's talk about the power of small wins, because I teach sales and funnels as like Russian nesting dolls, right? Where you solve one problem, take off the head, there's another problem underneath it, take off the head, there's another problem underneath it, and eventually we get to your product, right? But that's your pipeline. Your social solving a problem, your funnel solving a problem, your email follow-ups solving a problem, your podcast is solving a problem, whatever it may be. This podcast endeavors to solve the problem that most marketing and sales podcasts are incredibly boring. We're working on that, y'all. But, you're solving that series of problems by creating that series of small wins. Why are small wins so freaking powerful, Michelle?
Yeah, I think it builds confidence. It builds confidence in what the problem is. It builds confidence in like the person who's helping you get that small win that they can then help you with a bigger win. Mm-hmm. So I think the confidence, and plus, damn, it feels good to have a small win, right? Then
it does.
You're excited, motivated, ready to roll to the next problem, right? Feels like you can conquer. Like, yes, you're standing on the mountaintop. I've conquered, even though it's a really small win. I've conquered and it feels good. Let's do it again.
It's a check mark, right? I'm one of those people that write the to-dos that I've already done on my list if they weren't there already, just so I have that satisfaction of crossing them off. Mm-hmm. Right? But that's that burst of confidence, that burst of something happened today. There was movement today. There was progress today. I showed up today. Mm-hmm. And if you're saying focus on their transformation, then you're also saying I showed up for someone else today. To your point about how great it feels. Like Absolutely. You get to go to sleep that night and go, I led some people toward where they wanted to go.
Absolutely. I mean, when I get on a call with someone on a sales call, and you're a sales coach, you probably teach this too. But when I get on the sales call, I'm connecting with them and I'm seeing where I can give them a little win or a little nugget here and a little tip here or help there. So when they get off the call, whether or not they're joining my program or not, my main thing is that I left them with something that was better than when they came in. So that's going to help them get that win, whether they get it right there on the call or they go and do something to get a bigger win. Whatever that is, that's my goal when I get off the call with them.
Because it is a snowball effect, right? It's that incremental progress that gets us the big win. It's
That's right.
One of the things that I rebelled against so frickin' much at the beginning of whatever business was at the beginning of all of my businesses, a bajillion years ago, like a decade ago, I was so consistency, structure, and process avoidant. I didn't want it. I'm a creative. I'm a change maker. I'm a thought leader. I'm going to show up how I want to. I don't care if it's inconsistent. I'm in control. Okay. That's a really great way to build a network extremely slowly, right? Mm-hmm. It wasn't until I started showing up consistently that I saw progress, right? So that's another thing I think that's so powerful about that small win or the transformation is that that's also true for us. It's true for the clients and it's true for us. We're not growing our business one marathon at a time. We're growing it every single day in our processes, in our delivery, and in how we care for our customers. So I just love all of this. What else is going through your mind right now, Michelle? Tell me more about this. When we treat someone as a transaction, or when we as business owner get really focused on that 1 second buy button click, what do we miss? What do we blind ourselves to the possibility of?
Yeah, I think we miss the opportunity to, like, it kind of reminds me of the saying, like, you don't know who you're sitting next to. By bypassing all those steps, I feel like you don't get to know who's really sitting in front of you or sitting with you and having a conversation with you. So by connecting first and getting to know them a little bit first, I think it allows you to like kind of have a better idea. Like, this person might not be a fit for what you're doing right now, but maybe they have someone that they know that would be a perfect guest on your podcast, or maybe you have something for someone they know. So I think it just allows you to get deeper into like who the person is that you're sitting with, rather than just focusing on that transaction again.
Shifting gears, but staying in that same lane at the same time. As a podcasting and platform expert, When someone starts a podcast or when someone puts out a message and they aren't sure exactly who they're talking to, or they haven't done that groundwork to go out and connect, or, they're kind of just shooting in the dark, how can you tell? Like, what are some of the telltale signs of folks who don't know who they're marketing to?
Oh, this is a great question. So there's 2.7 million podcasts out there.
Ugh.
A good 2/3 of those have pod faded about 10 or 12 episodes. So they're out there. They've got about 10 or 12 episodes in. Those people have not figured out who they're talking to. Oh, nor have they had an authentic voice. Because if you are not saying your truth, you are not speaking your truth, your voice, you can't fake it. This is not an industry or not a platform that you can fake it till you make it. Honestly, you you cannot keep up a facade for that many episodes. So you have to be legitimately aligned with you, aligned with your message, aligned with who you're speaking to. Otherwise, it just won't work.
No, it will not. And on the flip side, the empowering part of that is if you're feeling timid about your voice, or if you're feeling timid about the truth of the circumstance or the needs of the people you're talking to, you have an infinitely better chance of success, not just in podcasting, but in business overall, if you bite the bullet and lean into your own you-ness, for lack of an actual term, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that timidity is just a form of self-protection, but you can see it. You can hear it in the branding. You can hear it in the show. Abso-freaking-lutely. So what questions about our audiences do you recommend that we ask ourselves, or do you recommend that we ask our listeners?
I think, first of all, you need to remember, like, this is something we say at Amplify You. Your uniqueness is your genius. It doesn't matter how many podcasts on marketing or sales there are out there, or how many podcasts about horses there are out there. You are the only one that's going to convey your message in the way that you do. So a couple of things I like to ask my listeners or potential listeners is what questions do you have, or kind of notice what people are already naturally asking you. What do people automatically come to you for advice on? Those are the things that you should be, really talking about in your show. Those are the things that are going to be easy for you to talk about. But I also think that the exercise of those, first 15 or 20 episodes, even if you don't continue on, is a great practice to get clarity on what is your voice, what is your message. I know it took me 4 freaking years to launch my podcast because I was fearful. I didn't know what I wanted to talk about. I didn't have clarity, as I was helping people launch podcasts long before I had my own. And it's just because I didn't know who was me, who did I want to talk to. And then I realized, wait a second, everyone's asking me about podcasting. I love talking about podcasting. I love teaching about podcasting. I'm like, maybe I should just stop resisting it. And maybe it is podcasting. That is what I love talking about, and is where my passion is. And I can share message about this incredible platform. So for me, it took me taking that unclarity and that hesitation and that fearfulness and being like, what is it that people are already asking me? What are they wanting to know from me? And recognizing that that was my uniqueness and just running with it.
Yes. I love that uniqueness idea, right? Because I think this show is born of me honoring that in myself, in that for as long as I can remember, when I watch a movie or when I sit down to something, I'm like, oh, that'd make a really good blog post, or, oh, that's a really good sales technique, right? I've always done this. Maybe I wasn't looking for sales, but back when I was a life coach, in the 80s, I wasn't a life coach in the 80s. I was a child in the 80s, but I was being dramatic. You know what I mean? But back when I was always looking for examples of positive psychology and TV and all of this stuff. That's just how my brain works. And so when I was coming up with a podcast idea, I thought, well, damn, why don't I just lean into that, and you and I talked in the pre-chat. I just attended She Podcast Live in Scottsdale not too long ago, a couple weeks ago, and it was fabulous. But one of the things they invited us to was a live taping of this true crime podcast called Fruitloops, Serial Killers of Color. And this show was so frickin' unique, from promise to delivery, just nonstop uniqueness. And damn it if I didn't come home, subscribe, and binge like 15 episodes. Because they're totally right. Most true crime podcasts are about white people. And I am trying not to just silo all of my knowledge, including serial killers, to white people. But they also did such a good like DEI and inclusion component, and it's educational and it's fun and it's light, and they have running gags. And I was like, God, this is great. Like, and nothing against the big podcast, but I thought it was just as good as Crime Junkie. You know, I thought it was just as good because it was maybe a lot more unique. So I love this idea of leaning into your uniqueness. What about interviews? How do we, if we're going to interview, number one, as a thought leader, do you think it's a good idea to reach out to others and to bring them to combine their voice with yours? Or what are the dangers, I guess, of losing yourself in interviews? Basically, Michelle, please rant at me about interviews, pros and cons.
I love it. And it just back to that uniqueness. I think you do such a great job of bringing like authentically you into like your hosting and recording of your episodes. Like that's what I love about your show. I think you've done a great job of that. And I'm going to go check out that Fruitloops show. I think that sounds awesome too.
Oh my God, it's so good. You know why? I will totally take airtime on this show to plug Fruitloops. That show is great. And it also was really enlightening because they have these things called Culture Corner. And Culture Corner explains the difference and significance and varying experience of people of color in these stories, so that, you know, when we're listening, we're also getting cultural context and we're learning. And I just thought that's so freaking responsible and beautiful and oddly actionable for a true crime podcast.
I love that. That's great. And that opens the doors to what I was going to say about interviews is that really like that uniqueness and that content, like that's not going to be found anywhere else. The creativity is like wide open for podcasting. So, you know, it's like the Wild West still. There's no right or wrong, and you don't have to fit into a container that's existing out there. You can create your own, like how you've done in this show. Like it's so great how you can weave pop culture into small business talk and sales and marketing, and it become this unique blend of something that's you. So when it comes to interviewing, I always suggest to our clients, like, yeah, interviews are amazing and they're such a great way. It's actually like the way the needle is going to move on your business is through the interviews in your podcast. But let your audience get to know you first. Statistically shows across the board, every show I've looked at that we work with, when I look at the numbers and their stats and the analytics of their show, the shows that it's them solo are far more downloadable or far more downloads on them usually than a show with a guest. But there's definitely a place for the guest. The guest, you have to think about your guest in a good way here. So you don't just want any random guest on your show. You've built this audience. They're liking, knowing, trusting you. You want to bring in someone that speaks to the same audience that you're creating. It doesn't make sense if you bring someone on that's in, although however cool they are, or they're celebrity-ish, they don't, it's not, your audience is not going to resonate with them the same way that it's someone from your audience. So for example, like Tony Robbins, he talks about the same things on all the episodes. So if you've seen an episode with Tony Robbins, someone might be like, oh yeah, I've heard an episode with him. Don't need to listen to that one. I'm going to skip to the one with Annie on there. I don't know Annie. And Annie's story syncs with me. Like, oh my gosh, I resonate so much about what she said. Her story is similar to mine. That's amazing. So that's one kind of interview where the story resonates with the problem that your audience has. The second option for the guest is that it's someone who works with the same audience you do, but solves a different problem. So for example, I love working with book author coaches because they have someone that's building a platform through writing a book. Oftentimes they need to get on podcasts to share the message about their book, or they want to have their own podcast. So those are similar audiences to ours. So it makes a lot of sense if I interview those kind of people. Secondly, when you are interviewing, the whole thing is you're using your podcast to leverage your relationship. So I'm looking for people who I want to get to know, like, Annie, hey, I saw you speak. I want to get to know you more. Cause I want to invite you on my podcast because I want to get to know you more. And those behind the before and after my conversations is really where we can talk about collaborating together. We can talk about maybe doing some business together. Maybe I need to hire you for something, or you need to hire me for something, or someone, one of your clients needs to hire me. So that's where the magic happens for me in podcasting, and where I kind of help our clients realize that that's where the magic happens, is not necessarily in the download numbers.
Oh, yeah. Podcasting is by far the best networking I've ever done.
Right.
And that is me guesting and me hosting this show. And the example you gave of, someone hears you speak, they invite you to their show. That is legitimately exactly how you wound up on this show. I heard you speak. I thought you were great. I reached out to you and said, hey.
Exactly. Right. And then you're going to come on my show. And it's like the same. So it's like, it's such a cool way of, I think, getting to open the door for new relationships of people that you wouldn't have otherwise connected with.
I can't imagine. So this show was born December 7th, 2020. I cannot imagine the last year of my life without the people that I've met in it. I can't. They're my best advisors. I've hired them. They've hired me. They're my best clients. They're my dear friends. They're my advisory board when I don't know if I should go left or right. I go out and I DM people that have been on my podcast, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? And it doesn't feel like I'm picking their brain, and I can be within boundary to be like, hey, I really want to ask you this one question. And they're like, cool, Annie, yes, of course. What do you need? The what do you need mentality, I think, is so much easier when you've given someone volume to put behind their voice.
Oh my gosh, yes. And like, I love this, I love this. And it is a technique, but it's like, it's so human. It's like, I want to lead with service in my business, and I want to lead with service in my life. It's like, so I want to reach out to someone and say, hey, Annie, I have a platform. I would love to showcase you, promote you, make you the star on my show. Can you please come on my show? Like, hello, absolutely. I will come on your show. And just like the law of reciprocity, it happens, but that's just like the bonus. That's the icing on the cake. It's not really, I mean, that's just, it's just so cool what happens afterwards. Like you said, you become like, you have that relationship now where you can text them or DM them, or they want to support you because you've supported them.
And I just can't wait to bastardize that quote from before where you accidentally made it sound like I'm more interesting than Tony Robbins. Can't wait to use that quote everywhere. Thanks, Michelle. You signed a waiver.
I love it. You're welcome.
I don't want to listen to Tony Robbins. I want to listen to Annie P. Ruggles. Thank you, Michelle, for that beautiful soundbite. Andrew, producer Andrew, who I love so much, please make sure we're using that everywhere. All right. This has been so amazing. I love how we talked about transformation and small wins, leaning into uniqueness, building relationships, fostering relationships through reciprocity. You've dropped gem after gem in this episode, Michelle, and I'm super grateful. Michelle, I was getting ready to ask you this critical question, which is, what does any of this have to do? Podcasting, interviewing, uniqueness, transformation. What does that have to do with our pop culture topic today? And then guess what happened, listeners? The internet took a great big crap on my dream of asking Michelle that question and said, no, we're going to tank Michelle's internet forever. But it wasn't forever. It was only for a little while. And she's back in the studio with me today. I can finally say, Michelle, what the heck is going on with Back to the Future? What does any of this have to do with our beloved Marty McFly? And welcome back, by the way.
Thank you. And our internet fast forwarded me to the future. So I love it. So that was very timely. So here I am.
Hey, now that is how you take a tech nuisance and turn it into a good time.
That's right. So now, a week later, I can tell you all the things that happened in Back to the Future. I just finished watching all 3 of the Back to the Futures with my kids, and they loved them. They thought they were the best movies ever. They're 6 and 9 years old, and Like, it's such a cool movie, even like so many years later. And I think what it has a lot to do with podcasting these days is that podcasting is kind of like that fancy new train in Back to the Future 3 that comes blasting through. It came blasting through my life like that back about 10 years ago, where it's like, this is a glimpse of the future, what things are going to be like. Jump aboard this train. Let's go for a ride. And it's totally brought us here today, like where the podcast space, as you know, Annie, changes like on a freaking daily basis. It's so crazy. Like one moment we're doing this, and then the next moment Spotify is being bought by something, and another huge company is being buying a large show for a huge amount of money. And like things move so fast to the fact where I was just sharing with someone a few minutes ago that something I recommended last year, I no longer recommend. And it's like, holy crap, it's moved so fast.
Yes, it really, really is. And luckily, or I was lucky, not luckily, I was very lucky and fortunate to get to go to a whole presentation about women and podcast listenership put on by Edison Research at She Podcast Live. And that, I am the cookie monster of that kind of data. Like if you put a chart in front of me, I'm like, no, tell me all the data. But if you look at the way that audio and specifically podcasts is gaining traction, you might not think that like a 1%, 2%, 3% gain year over year is big. And then you remember that there are literally billions of people in the world. And we're talking about 1 or 2% of billions of people, or millions of people, at least in the US. So I love that idea of like, it came on through like a train. I got to back up though, not a business related question at all, because I love that you have introduced your kids to the classics. Having grown up when these movies first came out, we were given a very clear picture of what the future should be. Namely hoverboards.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm waiting for a hoverboard.
Not given them. Right. So considering your kids were born more recently and are living in the future that we were promised without hoverboards, how did your kids take to the depiction of the now, known then as the future?
Yeah, it was, everything else in that movie almost is kind of like real, like life today. It looked to me, looking at it from, the 2021 lens, it looked like it does today, except for the hoverboards. And you know what they said though is, my kids were funny. They said, yeah, we don't have hoverboards that are like that. But as we were saying that, there's a guy on our lake who's hoverboarding along the lake over the water with a hoverboard. So they're here, maybe just not in the road yet, but they're here on the lake.
The future is now. We're just not on a lake, everybody. The future is real on a lake. I love that your kids are like, well, hold on. It's partially true. Like they're breaking it down optimistically, whereas the rest of us, like jaded Gen Xers and millennials, are like, I was promised so many things, and the only thing that became true is that Biff became president. That's the only thing that became true. Like, that is unfair. But I think you're so right in the way that like it, I think that's part of the thing about like why we listen to podcasts about the past and why we listen to podcasts about what we think the future will be, is because everything repeats, right? So like there are stories in the past that are resident now. And a lot of my favorite podcasts are storytelling podcasts like Lore or Criminal that literally tell me stories about things that previously occurred. But some other things, I know a lot of people listen to fantasy nonfiction podcasts about the future, or they listen to nuclear fission podcasts to talk about how we're going to fix the planet and stuff. And I just think it's so lovely that podcasting not only is the future, but it's really providing a through line for narratives of all times. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember at the beginning of 2020, when the pandemic was just starting, how I was like, ooh, do we talk about it on the podcast? Because it's going to make the podcast not so evergreen. Do we go there with current event stuff? And that was something previously that we were kind of, shying away from current events in the types of podcasts that we do, because you're going to date them, right? So listening to a business podcast now, like 3 years later, that's not like some of the stuff's not relevant. So really holding back on what was happening in our pandemic life, and then finally it was like, this thing's not going anywhere. We're going to talk about it. But now this is going to give the narrative for the future generations to go back and listen to now some of what we were going through and what our thoughts were during this time that nobody has ever kind of experienced before.
And you have the opportunity to change your mind, right?
Definitely.
So it's not like you said earlier, there was a product that you loved to recommend a year ago and things have changed so much, you don't recommend it anymore. It's not like your recommendation at the time is suddenly somehow backwards wrong and you gave horrible things. Your opinion has evolved. The situation has evolved. The problem has changed. Therefore, right? So I think sometimes when we think about putting ourselves out there and carving little itty bitty individual episodes of a legacy, we have a tendency to get so precious about each and every word we ever said. But you're allowed to change your mind, right?
Yeah. And as a podcaster, the more you use your voice, the more you're personally going to grow. It's actually one of the things that we're seeing right now, which is super crazy with people are getting so out of alignment because they're evolving so much. You cannot but help personally evolve and grow by being a podcaster. It's just naturally going to happen. You're growing, you're using your voice, you're standing up for what you believe in, you're sharing your information. You're going to grow and your mind's going to change. And it's okay that your podcast evolves with you. And it's okay that what you said last year is no longer relevant. This year you change your mind. That's totally fine. Like we just have to be okay with that. When podcasts first started, like we had to, like we mentioned earlier, we felt like it had to be like, we can only talk about that. We can't kind of flow into where we're growing. And actually you can. And I think it's better if you do, because then your podcast stays true to alignment with you.
Heck yes. I'm so glad you brought up alignment. I think that is absolutely freaking brilliant because I totally agree. If you stay in alignment with yourself and with your message and with the problem that you're trying to solve, then your opinion may evolve, but your alignment is really not likely to change. You're probably not going to wake up one day having an epiphany and go, you know what? I hate podcasting. Let's burn it all down. Okay, that's probably not going to happen. So as long as you're trying to give the best tools and the best tips to podcasters at the time, what that tip is allowed to change without you being out of alignment. I just had this like ridiculous fantasy of, the picture that Marty has of his siblings like it's fading.
Yeah.
I wish we all had like a copy of our podcast art or our headshot or something on our desk. And if we started going out of alignment, it would start to fade. Totally. Wouldn't that be so goofy? And then we would have to be like, oh no, I made a decision that's impacting my alignment.
My solution, time for a new season. Season, let's go. And one of the funny things about that is that, when you record your intro and outro, when you first launch a podcast, you are crappy at podcasting at that point, right? Like you suck, like to be honest, like you're not good. And yet that's the intro and outro that's on every episode. So you do after a while want to go back and refresh that. Probably.
Yeah. You want to put a fresh coat of paint on that sucker. I mean, that goes for everything. Like I went to my program the other day and I was going through it to like audit it. And I was like, wow, this is so good. And I'm bopping along. And then I'm like, listen, 2020 is going to be a great year. And I was like,
little did you know.
Time to put a fresh coat of paint on this program. Might need to replace this video. I was just like, oh my God, hysterical. Because I'm also like, luckily, I know that the program is good enough that one little gaffe isn't going to really pull my clients out of it. But I can just see my clients being like, okay, A, she needs to update this video. And B, okay, now we know Annie could be extremely wrong. Like, okay, yes, I can. That's awesome. But, and okay, hold on. I want to go back to this alignment and keep tying it into Back to the Future because now I'm just having so much fun doing this. Johnny Be Good was not in alignment with the prom. And Marty should have considered his audience, or Or Johnny Be Good was not in alignment with the prom. And it's good that he stayed true to himself and played his music anyway. Which one do you think it is?
Oh, I think B. That he
B,
stayed true
you think
to
it's
himself.
good that he just did him?
Yes, that he did him because that was what he was meant to do all along. Yeah.
Well, you do you, Marty McFly,
Yeah.
aka Kevin Klein. You do you.
Marty McFly, like
Calvin
know what a
Klein.
name.
What is it? Kevin Klein. Kevin Klein is an actor. Calvin Klein. What did you say?
I said Marty McFly. What a name.
Marty McFly. Just.
Now, in the podcasting
swoon.
space now, like imagining them, where they went back and they looked and they were, he was overweight, he was getting divorced, they were going to get divorced, he was like being fired from his job. Now that's what happens when you don't do season 2 and you get out of alignment with your podcast.
That's what happens when you allow pod fade to take you into a dark place. Right? And then Doc shows up and he's like, we have to go back. And you're like, I just got here. What's going on right here? And I'm so confused. Something about my children. I have children. What is happening? But then it's okay because then in the real future, your kids point out that hovercraft do sort of exist. Kind of. So maybe the future might be bright after all.
Yeah. They still want to do it out of a car though. Come on. Like that's pretty cool. As a car is moving fast, jump out of the car into a hoverboard. Not there yet.
I've also been waiting for DeLorean doors to come back on cars, but somebody pointed out to me one day, like legit in a heated argument that we were having. They were like, and you're never going to get a DeLorean because you're too short to work the doors. And I was like, that is true.
You'd have to like jump and hang on it and pull it in.
That's exactly not going to make me a target at all in the city of Chicago for a carjacking when I'm literally having to leap in my car and slam it shut behind me. Oh, goodness, there's a visual. Listen, DeLorean makers of the world, robotic doors. That's what I need you to do.
That's right.
Anyway, wow.
We can do everything else with the push of a button. Why can't we do the doors?
Why can't we do the doors? Another question for you. Biff Tannen, is he or is he not the movie equivalent of bro marketing? And what do we do about the Biff Tannens of the world?
Oh my gosh. Yes, totally. I don't know. I don't know what to do with them. They're just there.
They are just there.
What do you do with them? I don't know. I think you got to not let them. I think that, you just got to not let them interfere with where you're going. Stick in your lane. Don't let them come into your lane.
Keep your eyes on your own paper.
Yeah, keep your eyes on your yoga mat.
Yes. Don't let Biff hurt your mom. But in this scenario, your mom is your business and you should mind your own. I don't know where I'm going with this at all. I am doing just about as well as his dad is at talking to his mom right now. Okay, come on. What else? Are there any beautiful Back to the Future allusions that we haven't discussed yet, other than just like our love and adoration for Doc Brown and for Clara and for, everybody in that wonderful film? Is there something I haven't asked you yet about Back to the Future?
What's our train? What's our train that they're riding on? Like, what is that for us right now?
Ooh, what is our train? Yeah, where are we going?
I don't know, but it looked pretty fancy, pretty cool. I was waiting for the number 4 to come out so we can check out the train and how it goes into the future and comes back, and looks pretty cool. I think it looks like an amazing vehicle.
Cool. So, it does. And our podcast can be amazing vehicles for us. There, everybody, we did it. Oh, we did it.
I feel like maybe it's NFTs, or maybe the NFT is our futuristic train. I don't know. We'll see.
Now there's an idea. All right. Here's my question for you. 2 more. First one. It's Back to the Future 3. You wind up in the Old West. You cannot wear period-appropriate outfits. What are you wearing in the Old West? Trying to fit in, but not working.
Lululemon pants, I think. I don't think those will work very
Yes,
good.
you're getting your athleisure on, baby.
Teabag tank top and Lululemons, ready to go to the gym with my yoga mat. Doesn't quite work, does it?
They are not going to know what to make of you in that saloon. Oh my goodness. But here in this reality, Michelle, it has been such a pleasure to sit down with you today. Tell all of us, how do listeners start a connection with you?
Well, that's a great question. We have an event coming up, and that is monthly. It's called podcastsalesmachinelive.com. I think it's a 4-hour masterclass where you get to talk to me and Evans Putman, my partner, who is a monetization expert for podcasts. We're going to teach you the blueprint you need to get your business and your podcast in alignment and start making you some money. So don't miss it. It's podcastsalesmachinelive.com.
Fan-flippin-tastic. Michelle, both this week and last, it's been such a delight to have you. Thank you. Thank you for braving the weathers of the internet to be here with me today.
Well, thank you, Annie. This has been one of the most fun interviews I've ever done.
Yes. Everybody else, I'm going to go gloat, and I'll be back in a second with my final thought and your homework for the week. Well, hey there, listeners. Some weeks I try really hard to come up with homework that you won't see coming, but this week it's probably already occurred to you. Yep, this week your homework is to submit yourself to be interviewed on at least one podcast. Yep, a podcast telling you to podcast. I know, so meta, not to be confused with capital M meta and whatever the heck Zuckerberg is up to today. But I digress. You sitting there right this second, yes, you have a message. Screw that. You have tons of messages, plus stories, tips, tricks, and super valuable asides that make your brain special. Podcasting is a phenomenal way not only to put that message out there, but to play with and refine your material and to find and bond with folks in your industry and ecosystem. Most of the guests on this show that I didn't already know have become my close friends, or at least my associates that I'm glad to refer to. There are bajillions of ways to apply, including a Facebook group with 26,000 members. But I love the smaller podcasting communities where folks are specifically looking for their perfect match. I personally recommend matchmaker.fm, Poddit, which is Poddit, and the Podcast Collective. And if you're like me and you've already done a bajillion interviews this year, you're not off the hook for homework, my friend. Nope. Your task this week is to go back, not to the future, but to an episode you're proud of and repurpose the heck out of that content. You can cut it into audiograms, share it to YouTube, pull quotes into Canva, make a present for your guests, whatever. But make it all shiny and new and breathe new life into it, because there's a lot of life left in it. I can't wait to see what you discover and hope you have fun finding it. Hey, thanks for listening. Too Legitimate to Quit is brought to you by the Non-Sleazy Sales Academy and me, your host, Annie P. Ruggles. Listen, we talk a lot about marketing on this show, and that's because I fully, earnestly believe that every dime and every moment we spend marketing is totally worth it unless we turn around and sabotage ourselves at the finish by refusing to sell and sell beautifully. Why? A lot of us have a misconception of what selling actually requires of us or who it needs us to be. Please give me the opportunity to help change your mind at www.nonsleazy.com. That's NONSLEAZY.com. Big shout out to the fabulous dudes who help make this show what it is. My producer and editor, Andrew Sims of Hypeable Impact. My composer, Riley Herbasio. And my show artist, Francois Vigneault. They're all fabulous, and I'd be glad to introduce you. Until next week, just do your best, and remember, you're too legitimate to quit.